Moments ago, the flags over the Capitol were lowered in memory of Senator Dianne Feinstein. As California's longest-serving senator, Senator Feinstein broke barriers and blazed a trail for women. Her career was, by any standards, historic. Speaking personally, I worked with the senator for quite some time, together on many different bills, but the one that I think stands out was our water legislation. It was historic. It was the first time in California history in more than 25 years that we were able to pass water. It was the WIN Act. And I remember the hours and the nights that we would have to work to try to work through, and the challenges. We come from different parties, we have different philosophies, but we put our state first. At the same time, Barbara Boxer opposed it. It was one of the last votes of the Senate. It had more than 70 votes at the time. And I believe at the end of the day, the trailblazing of the first woman elected mayor, even coming from a different party, inspired women from both sides of the aisle to seek elected office and to have their voices heard. My deepest condolences to her family, her colleagues, and to her staff. Last night, the House did something none of you sitting here thought we can do. The number of questions I could take from the number of weeks about doing appropriation bills. I told you, don't give up on us, because we're not giving up on the American people. We passed 3 appropriation bills: defense, state, and foreign ops, and homeland security. My biggest question is, I don't understand why the Democrats voted against funding the government. In all, we have 4 appropriation bills done. There's 12 overall to get done. It's the discretionary spending every year that government is supposed to do. We have now in the House passed more than 70% of the discretionary spending on appropriations. Need I remind you, how much has the Senate passed? 0. Not one appropriation bill has passed the Senate. We've done what many have said was impossible. When I became Speaker, I said we're going to change Washington. And we did that by keeping our commitment to restoring regular order. Bills that passed committee in June and July have been open for amendments for months. Struggled with a number of members who wouldn't allow it to come up, but I never gave up. 440 amendments were considered on the floor this week. And for those who are historians, we are the first Republican majority to pass the state and foreign ops bill through regular order since 2006. My entire political career as a member of Congress, the Republicans have never been able to do what they just did last night. As we continue to get conservative wins and return to regular order, we actually need a stopgap measure to allow the House to continue to finish its work, to make sure our military gets paid, to make sure our border agents get paid as we finish the job that we're supposed to do. Another reason for the stopgap is to address President Biden's historic failure on the southern border. This is how bad things have gotten under President Biden's watch. In 5 days, there's been more than 50,000 illegal border crossings. Put that in perspective, in just 5 days. That's more than twice as much as the average for the entire month in the last administration. A wide open policy hurts America. We've heard it from Democrat leaders across the country. But despite the chaos, the president still won't go to the border, setting new records every day. Fentanyl at an all-time high, killing Americans, and he refuses to go to the border. He's been one time in 50 years.
All right, we're continuing to look back on the life and legacy of Senator Dianne Feinstein. But as you just heard from the House Speaker, Kevin McCarthy, there is business to be done in the halls of Congress. Let's go to CBS News Chief White House Correspondent Nancy Cordes. Nancy, before we get to Kevin McCarthy, let's talk about what the President of the United States is saying, has said about Dianne Feinstein and her legacy.
Well, he put out a statement a short time ago, Vlad, about his former Senate colleague. And I think what stood out from that statement about a woman that he worked so closely with, particularly on the assault weapons ban in the mid-90s, but so many other issues as well. He said, "I knew what she was made of, and I wanted her on our team." He was talking about why he recruited her to serve on the Judiciary Committee when he was the chair of the Judiciary Committee. And notable that after she was recruited onto that team, it was just a couple of years after she became a senator that she was authoring and pushing through this major piece of legislation, the assault weapons ban. And it really, established her as a formidable legislator and a leader, and she would go on to lead on so many other issues, from fuel efficiency to gay marriage to cybersecurity to interrogation practices.
And he also went on to talk about the current business happening in the House, which is trying to hammer out some sort of funding for the government so that we're not looking at a government shutdown. Kevin McCarthy, pretty proud of himself, saying that the House has so far passed 4 appropriation bills, 3 of them just last night, but there are 12 in total to pass. So I'm not sure how it works. If they pass 4 of them, does that mean that those departments will then are guaranteed to be funded beyond this weekend, but they still got to hash out things for the other departments?
Only if those bills were then to be passed by the Senate. And it doesn't look like they're going to be. In fact, I can assure you that they're not going to be. The Senate is controlled by Democrats who, like the president, don't support the bills that the Republicans have been putting forward. In fact, just a short time ago, the Office of Management and Budget announced that President Biden would veto those spending bills if they were to get to his desk. And they said that that is because those bills are a blatant violation of the funding agreement that the Speaker and the President hashed out just a few months ago. They say that the cuts in those spending bills are reckless, that they don't fully fund the FAA, for instance, that they leave food assistance for women and children underfunded, and that the Homeland Security bill that Republicans have put forward, a border security bill, is not in line with American values. And so, yes, McCarthy is right that Republicans have managed to pass some spending bills on the floor, but it doesn't count if those bills are sure to be defeated or ignored in the U.S. Senate 24 hours before a shutdown is set to kick in.
Nancy, let me ask you, we heard House Speaker Kevin McCarthy suggesting that the president hasn't done enough on the southern border, my memory's fuzzy on this. I know that members of the military, if the government goes into a shutdown, won't get paid. What happens to Border Patrol agents if there is a shutdown?
It's a complicated mechanism. There are some workers, if they're deemed non-essential, that can get furloughed. There are some workers, if they are essential, who have to continue to work without pay. And I believe that Border Patrol agents would fall into that bucket. But that doesn't mean that border security operations are going to go unaffected, because there are all kinds of people who work behind the scenes, who are administrative, who make the Border Patrol operate, who are sort of doing all kinds of work on the back end that will cease. And so it doesn't really matter if you've got people out there on the front lines arresting, for example, people coming across the border illegally, if then all the people who process them and who house them and who deal with the paperwork and who enter them into the judicial system, if a lot of those people are furloughed, you can see how very quickly you have a mess on your hands. And that's something that's going to get replicated in every agency within the federal government if we go into a shutdown mode.
All right, Nancy Cordes for us at the White House. Nancy, as always, we thank you. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.